Now, that actually shows you the picture of whether we are growing or not growing. Don't forget the capital expenditure is the expenditure that grows the economy. However, the recorded budget cannot suddenly be cut because you are talking of salaries, you are talking of wages, you are talking of overhead costs. You can't suddenly just cut it. What you need to do as a short-term measure to bridge the gap between the disproportionately high recurrent budget vis-a-vis the capital budget in order to permit growth in the system is to block leakages. See, the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission just saved the country 704 billion naira in 5 years. That's about 120 billion naira per year. 820 billion will fix the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road.
How did they do that?
And they did it by simply blocking leakages through repetitive budgeting and through ensuring that warehousing of funds were blocked. To warehouse a fund actually means that if a ministry has budgeted, for example, a ministry submits a budget that is more than its requirement, then it should return the money to the national purse. But what they do is that they send it into the account of a corporation over which they have supervisory authority. And since the Auditor General does not directly audit the corporations, that money which they provided for this year's expenditure will be warehoused, will be kept outside of that budget. And nobody is going to investigate it next year. And it will now be available for spending without appropriation. That's called warehousing. That is, money that you have budgeted in excess of your need. And instead of returning it back to the treasury, you keep it somewhere in the corporation. That is, in a department under your supervision. Since the Auditor General cannot audit directly, the Constitution prevents the Auditor General from directly auditing the corporations. That's one of the flaws in our Constitution. The Auditor General of the Federation should be able to audit NNPC, should be able to audit FIRS directly without having to seek the approval of the National Assembly. But our law says no. The Auditor General can only appoint auditors from the list of auditors presented to it by the same corporation. Now, how will the corporation not select those that will favor it and just write the books? I just quake at the system that we run in this country.
Let me just move you back a bit. Sulaiman talked about cutting cost of governance as against retrenchment. How would it affect retrenchment and all that? Yes. That also would tie into revenue generation.
Yes.
The country has so far been basically earning its revenue from oil.
Yes.
You talked about most of its revenue. You've talked about the price of crude now being about $44 a barrel.
So thereabout.
But we have agencies that are supposed to be revenue generating agencies, and some of them sometimes post profits of trillions, like the
FIRS.
Yes.
Nigerian Customs Service.
Questions that many Nigerians are asking is, how is it that those monies that they post sometimes do not seem to reflect in the income of the country?
It reflects this year's budget. For example, the FIRS is to contribute 48%, and NNPC the balance. So that's it. It reflects. It reflects. You see, when we talk of, the major sources of the income of this country are divisible into two planks. The first, oil revenue, and the second, non-oil revenue. Under the non-oil revenue, FIRS alone accounts for about 90% of it. And then Nigerian Customs Service follows. So we have a situation in which the revenue of these agencies also reflect. What we have not had is a system that is accountable enough to ensure that corrupt dealings, even in the FIRS, are blocked in such a way that the amount of revenue that they ought to realize are actually realized. For example, if you state that you are going to earn 10 naira and you actually have capacity for 50 naira, you are a fraudster. Even though you earn that 10 naira. Because if that means you have understated your capacity to earn. That's defrauding the nation. And that is why what we need to deal with at the FIRS, it has capacity to earn more than...
But there are other agencies that could earn revenue for the nation.
The Nigerian Customs Service.
Besides Nigerian Customs.
Even the universities can earn from their research and innovation, the application of the researches and innovation.
So in diversifying the economy, shouldn't we be looking at these other areas? The universities,
look at.
Not just agriculture because agriculture is one of the things that are going to be hinged on.
We should look at agriculture really because it is labor intensive, and so it can employ the largest chunk of our workforce. Yes, but we should look at those areas that we sideline. like universities researchers. There's no reason why the president, for example, should begin to worry himself about who should be finance minister when we have more than 57 departments of economics in the Nigerian universities. Just ask the Nigerian Economic Society, give me one crackhead that can crack the revenue system of the Nigerian nation, and you'll be surprised, in less than 2 hours, the Nigerian Economic Society will supply a first-class econometrist that will do it. The problem is that we don't patronize our university system. We don't do that. We go on shopping for what we really don't need. Whereas those things that we actually have and need, we don't shop for them. The university system can earn huge income in this country. And they can do that through research, the commercialization of the research effort and the application of such research efforts. The Obafemi University, for example, is doing a good job in this area. And it's high time the Nigerian government started looking into those areas. Commercialization of research findings. They are lying in the archives, and nobody is doing anything about it.
You know, the same way they lie in the archives, we're talking about archival materials and even materials that should have gone ahead to help the situation in the country.
Yes.
What comes to mind is the report from the Auditor General. And if you say that report is hardly ever looked into.
Hardly ever. Hardly ever. In fact, to the extent that there's an organization called Budget, applied to the Nigerian courts to compel the National Assembly to release the details of transfers, statutory transfers to statutory bodies, Code of Conduct Bureau, Population Commission, etc., etc. And as an addition to it, this same budget has also complained of the non-treatment of the reports of the Auditor General of the Federation. Why would you have an office? An office, actually, the Auditor General of the Federation is like the financial ombudsman, the policeman of the budget. And the Auditor General has gone to report to say the budget has been corruptly dealt with. And the government that has set up that office of the Auditor General completely sidelines that report and will do nothing about it. The President of the Federal Republic, General Muhammadu Buhari, is advised to look into the report of the Auditor General in the last 7 years, and he will be dazed to see the huge chunk of the resources of the Nigerian nation that are gone down the drains as a sort of leakages and wastages. He need not go any further to look for corrupt dealings. Just look at the Auditor General's report, and that will suffice. That will suffice for 10 years.
Let's go back and see how we just talked about it in passing. Perhaps you should try as much as possible to explain what you mean by a zero budgeting system.
Yes. Zero budgeting system also permits you to look at the value you are adding vis-a-vis the amount you are investing. Incremental project does not look at that. You invest $10 million, then you must calculate the cost-benefit analysis. If I have invested 20 billion naira on the building, or 178 billion naira on the building of the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road, actually more than 1 billion naira per kilometer, then I must be able to check how much value I'm deriving from that money that I'm investing. Zero-based budgeting permits that. It's actually very close to a performance budgeting system or the planning, programming, budgeting system. But what this one actually, why it's different from the PPBS is that you must get a chunk of money that is available before you begin. You must have expenditure backing before you begin to project. No expenditure project or no expenditure activity is embarked upon unless there is the money available to start it first and then complete it. Not that you start a project and then midway you dry off of funds and abandon it.
What will be the benefits besides ensuring that projects are followed through?
Accountability, transparency. It cuts wastages, it blocks leakages, and it ensures that the Nigerian economy is put on the driving seat that is stronger than the driving seat of armchair budget.
Dr. Ogunyemi, one thing you have just also raised is a look at the Auditor General's report over the years, and we do hope that the government should be able to do that. Dr. Tunji Ogunyemi is a budget historian, an economist, and a lawyer. Many thanks for speaking with us this morning.
Thank you, Suleiman.
We'll stay on this particular matter, 2016 budget outlook in the days to come. Take a moment now. We'll return shortly. Join us again.